well, everything is now programmable, and it turns out that, now we talk about things that connect to the internet, and so it's you got to realize that in those days, the connection to the phone system was highly regulated, and but I mean it's the interconnectivity of things, the IoT. Now it's a long ways. I mean, this is truly Wright's brothers flying to today's IoT, but it certainly is part of the trend.
Charlie, what were some of the most important things you learned as head of development for LSI?
Well, one was when it came to producing integrated circuits, the question was more maintaining and improving on what you have than trying to start from scratch, because starting from scratch would be nearly impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly computer simulations. In those days, I think the last thing I did at HP before I left to start Trimble was I headed up a LSI, IEEE LSI symposium at Stanford. We were asking the question then of how much smaller could the feature size be, because we were running out. We were having to start to rely on X-ray lithography, which clearly wasn't a good way forward. Now it turns out that actually wasn't necessary, and some really, really, really clever applied physics got involved and solved that problem. But
what was important to you at LSI in terms of maximizing the productivity of your staff?
Well, no, my job at HP was to run engineering for the IC facility. Before I took the job, my predecessor had been going around to people in fact, he gave me his little tin cup that he had used figuratively to go around to people to beg for small amounts of money in return for specific tasks in the year. Well, I decided that if I was going to do it, I was going to do something useful with it. And I was willing to cut the cost of operation of the facility in trade for a defined budget. And so I took as my task figuring out what the instrument designers were going to need 2 years, 3 years from now, not what they needed now. And so that's how I ran it. Now, that's basically useful and dangerous to health in any organization that is becoming more bureaucratic. I mean, this is the whole yin and yang of control orientation versus achievement orientation. And if you want to create things that don't exist before, you clearly have to be in the achievement orientation. And if you want to stay in power, you clearly want to be in the control oriented. So the first thing that I was having a lot of trouble with your question, what was my greatest mistake at HP? Because I would never have made it to the executive suite at HP. Now, I could say that it's because what I was doing was a mistake. And if my goal had been to get to the executive suite at HP, it would have been a mistake. But it's actually contrary to basically everything I believe in.
Yeah. There was a box at HP, and you never perfectly fit in.
No, there's no question. And as a matter of fact, I would. Not everybody loved the fact that I did what I wanted to do, and that at times I skirted the rules.
And this harkens back to your very first interactions with Al Begley and what he tested you with.
Yeah.
Charlie, after LSI, did you realize at some fundamental level that HP was really a different company, maybe even a bit unrecognizable from when you started?
Well, certainly at the time I left. No. There's no question that it was becoming a different company at the time that the LSI project was canceled. And certainly by the time I left, it was very, very clear to me that HP had gone from technology-driven to marketing-driven to resource allocation-driven. I assumed at the time that was probably good for the monetization of the company, but it certainly wasn't where I wanted to be. I felt pretty comfortable that I had learned everything I needed to learn to try my hand at it. Now, I happened to choose something that was probably in about the worst market that I could possibly have chosen, the marine electronics market. But one step at a time. Well, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Charlie, as you explain how HP had changed, I wonder how we might understand the birth of Apple computing and the way that Steve Wozniak did not develop his vision within HP.
It's really interesting because the time that was going on, that was occurring on the same floor of the building that I was working. HP Labs, run by Barney Oliver, a Caltech grad, brilliant, seldom wrong, and intolerant of dissent. It's something that comes along with being brilliant and seldom wrong. But at the time that the Apple thing was being played with at HP, they had come up with something called the Cordic algorithm, which was a way of getting mathematical functions that could be basically programmed onto fundamentally a PC board. Um, uh, I'm losing some of the details, but this was the basis of the computing calculators that were done. It was Fort Collins, in Fort Collins, that HP was selling $3,000 to $5,000 computing calculators, not the little handheld stuff. They were big and they were programmable, and they could do all of the. They certainly could do all of the scientific the scientific notation and all of that sort of stuff, and so that was what HP was doing. Then when Packard went to the Pentagon, the joke around HP was that Packard went to the Pentagon to test Hewlett by putting all government contracting on hold, which affected which, several tiers down, got to HP in the sale of instrumentation. But Hewlett's thing was a handheld scientific calculator. Mm-hmm. And, that actually ended up coming out at Corvallis, the Model 35, $350 for the original unit. And following that, the absolutely brilliant project leader that had led that went to Apple. And he was in charge of the Lisa project at Apple. And, it was the failure, it was my knowing this person and the failure of the Lisa project at Apple that caused me to realize that Apple, or Steve Jobs' genius, was marketing, not technology. Mm. And that, he won by painting computers pink. The iMacs that came out, you could choose your color. So that became very clear. It became very clear to me that Apple truly was a marketing, cool product company, not basically a technology company. Mm-hmm. Now, they clearly use technology, and they have some brilliant technologies.
But that's not the secret sauce, you're saying? It's marketing.
Not the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Well, and you see it now. It's it's the whole ecosystem, the selling of ads, the selling of apps, the way that Apple can charge 3 times as much for their smartphones as other people because of the apps.
Yeah. Charlie, last question for today, which obviously will be prelude to our next discussion. When did you become first aware that HP was interested in developing navigation equipment? And what opportunity did you see at that point?
Oh, well, this was another Al Bagley thing. Al Bagley was a sailor, and, so was I at the time. There were 4 of us in the lab that that had bought this Cal 24 together, and we went out and we raced it Saturdays in San Francisco Bay. But no, the project was Al's, and I could have taken when the IC tester project was canceled. I could have had the Loran-C project. I chose not to take it because I needed something that I needed a win. But I followed it. And I also was super aware when Ralph Eschenbach basically had done an under-the-table project at HP Labs and was listening to the first GPS satellite when it was transmitting. I was very aware that that was going on.
And that was the moment of opportunity for you.
Well, no, the moment of opportunity was that Al Bagley was kicked upstairs. Al Bagley was kicked upstairs, and he was replaced by a marketing manager as division manager. And this marketing manager was deathly afraid that technology was going to, how should I put it, pollute his product strategy. So he refused to set out a game plan with a horizon of greater than 2 years. Well, at that point, I knew that there was nothing I could do with an IC facility because it was going to take me something between 1 year and 2 years to produce an IC, and then it was going to take between 2 years and 3 years to produce an instrument. So I had nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I picked up the canceled Loran-C project.
Charlie, that's a great place to pick it up for next time.